Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Joined today by the GOAT, the legend, the Yoda of media, Mark Ostrander. That's a compliment. Very smart guy. And the best hair in the game, Grant Turner. We spoke to him. He is on his way to Paris.
10 minutes, flies out.
Yeah, so we all tease each other on the show, Mark, but GT is one of the hardest working people in wrestling. I mean, he's helping coach a national championship college team. He's designing singlets. I always feel blessed that he takes time, him and Shane Goodell, to make Border Brawl, to make us feel important. Because, I mean, there's people that talk about doing high-level things, and there's people that are actually doing high-level things. And most of the time, people that are talking about it aren't actually doing it, to be honest, or they're taking way more credit for their role in the process than what it actually is. GT is one of those real dudes. And, he was running the Fargo booth and networking up there and, flew back home, got some laundry, probably is on his way to Chicago to then head over to the Olympics. So I've been blessed. Grant and I have been friends for a long time, and I really should shout out Scott Casper and you were with me when I met Grant and Scott at the Cleveland fantasy draft that fell down because of the Wi-Fi, and met those guys, and they've been instrumental. This is interesting because I didn't think we were going to start the podcast this way, but GT and Shane are awesome guys, and the people at the other companies are too. This is no comparison. There's nothing, but I work with those guys and I watch what they do, and they tell me what they're doing for other organizations and people and groups, and are almost like Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility, and they're just doing really good things. So
yeah, and the thing about Grant that I don't think people understand, because they don't know him like you and I do, or especially you, because you've known him longer than I have, is that he doesn't just do wrestling for Nike.
Right.
He does other sports. So, I mean, he's got to go over there. There's fencing and I was shocked when I heard he was doing fencing and has to have uniforms for other countries, because we're not the only country that wears Nike, obviously. So, he's got big responsibilities over there. And it's like I was saying to him, why are you going so early? I mean, you're going to have a great time. And he says, well, I got to do this event and this event and this event. I'm in charge of these things, and I got to make sure everybody's got what they need and things like that. And I said, I didn't know you did all those things. He goes, yeah, they won't let me just do wrestling. So that's kind of cool that he's able to do so many different activities.
I think GT could use a full-time assistant and still work 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
So GT, when you're watching this, we got love for you, bro. It's it's funny, man, because you and me and Grant, we really give it to each other off the air, especially but it's all love, man. Like when I had COVID in 21, like nobody knows this about Mark. I always answer my phone. And I thought I felt like I was going to die. And you call my parents, like, is he okay? I mean, like, we really love each other. And so it's awesome to see people succeeding. And it's awesome. Grant's one of those guys that just does a lot for the sport. I mean, there's been times like I'm like, hey, this kid can't afford a pair of shoes, and he'll send the shoes to the kid. And they get there's no ROI for them. They're just doing it. And those are real people. So, I mean, GT, if we embarrass you, I apologize, but we're embarrassing you with the good stuff, not the bad stuff. So he's also a big critic of the size of my font on my phone. And I'm getting a new phone today, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. All right, Marco, where do you want to go first? You want to go to U20? Do you want to go to...
Let's go to U20, start it off, because that happened before Fargo.
Okay, so we killed everybody.
Well, we sent a pretty good team. I mean...
we went 10 for 10.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I spoke to Gary Abbott about this off the air like a couple years ago, because there's another person thing. Gary very, very rarely tells me / us what we have to talk about. And when I say rarely, once a year, and that might be too high. Okay, like, so it's not like, once a month he's chiming in.
Well, wait a minute. Before you go there are things, and Gary's just doing his job, obviously, that come out that we hear about, but we can't really talk about it right away. So he tells us you can't talk about that yet because it hasn't been totally finalized yet. So, he's doing his job.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So that's correct. That's more of journalistic integrity versus talking about, fact versus innuendo or rumors. What I'm saying is he doesn't say to us, hey, this podcast has to be 40 minutes about USA Wrestling and 20 minutes about college. Like, we have a ton of artistic freedom, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
And we don't curse and we don't make fun of people, like the only people we make fun of are each other. So now I lost my train of thought. Oh, so I talked to Gary about this a couple years ago. In the beginning, I was like, hey, we killed everybody at Pan Ams. We killed everybody at U15s. And then it just kept happening. And so you get numb to it, right? Like, we all get, it's bad. We get numb to excellence, even if it's continued excellence. We're like, well, okay, we're like, if we had only 3 medalists at the U20s, Pan Ams, we're like, what's going on? So I will say this. I think it's the empirical data says it's way harder to make our team than it is to win a gold medal. Not way hard. Yeah, probably. I mean, it's way harder to make our team than the medal. I'll say that. So, but 10 for 10, and some of the guys in there, like Ladarian Lockett, are guys that, I'm familiar with and been part of our events, but, and we didn't send all our number ones. A couple guys came back, or were held back for whatever reason and still won.
Yep.
So great performance by USA Wrestling. I do know this, like, I talked to Joe Jeter and his dad were on the U17 team. It's a very cool moment for them, and it's kind of full circle with Grant when they get their gear, when they get their Nike package, and because that's such a subtle flex, right? When you're walking around on campus, whether it's high school or college, and you're wearing like what you're wearing or I'm wearing, right? Like, but they're not old guys that just got the gear because they got a podcast. They get it because they earned it.
Yeah.
So I think it continues to show the development of what's going on in our country. I'm going to get Jaden on in the next couple of weeks to talk about the developmental program. We talked about that last week. I'm interested in talking to him about that because he learned a lot of wrestling from Mike Ironman, who really look at the sport, I think, differently than a lot of people. It's a different kind of Rubik's Cube for him, for lack of a better phrase. So, Jaden, I'm wrong a lot, Mark, but when Jaden was coming out of high school, did I not tell you he was going to win nationals as a true freshman?
You did.
Yeah. Like, not that that's like some great observation, but, like, I think you thought I was a little crazy, like, because that's not a weight where true freshmen win a lot.
Yeah.
So,
you're right.
Yeah. So super, and I've known the family forever, so super excited to see his path there and how that all shakes out. All right, let's go to Fargo. How much have you been watching, sir?
Not as much as I would like to, just because of work. So I've been on the road for the last 5 days. So watched a little bit on my phone, mostly just going through the brackets, seeing, what the upsets were by the seeds, which is kind of hard to say because there's quite a few weights where, Pennsylvania won, both styles, U16 and juniors, but
not both styles, both age groups.
But they had like four or five guys in each weight bracket at some of these weights, and these guys they're all good. So it was fun to watch it. But a lot of the top seeds kind of surprised me. Didn't even place. They're placed a lot lower than anticipated. So it's a great tournament. The numbers are outrageous. I I don't know how these fans and coaches go there and what, I mean, I guess it's just networking because you can't watch all the matches. There's just so much going on.
Okay, so I'll give you a little pushback. That's a lot like NCAAs, right? Like when you and me have been on the floor together or sat in the crowd together,
yep.
And there's this ooh or ah. Unless you're watching that, by the time the ooh or ah happened, you already missed it, right?
Yep.
And that's 8 mats. Again, there's like 25 or 30 there. Networking is certainly a critical piece of it, but when you get down to the end and the semis are only on 3 or 4 mats and the medal matches are all on these mats, then it's a deal. And you're just sorting out the contenders from the pretenders. Let's go to the seeding thing, because like Willie posted like 41% of the kids that placed were not seeded or were seeded 9th or lower. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I've thought a lot about this because I'm friends with Willie, you know that. And I respect Willie. I respect Willie's high school knowledge and his absolute love for the game. Okay. I think seeding this tournament would be almost an impossible assignment. Okay, first of all, there's a couple states that don't even turn in who's entering. So, like, that's less than helpful. So, you guys, if you're doing that, turn your people in. Okay, it's for the good of sport. Second of all, it's really difficult to seed people because there's such, first of all, like when we seeded NJCAAs, right? Like, and it's hard because Nassau doesn't wrestle Clackamas. So maybe they do now, but I'm saying when we were doing it. And so like you have to find this one common opponent match and try to connect it. And the thing is, we were just ranking. So rankings don't even really matter. Okay, like they matter more at Division I than they do in JUCO because JUCO had a formula at the time. Like rankings matter more in D1 because there's a lot of college coaches who just look at the rankings when they do the coaches' rankings. The other problem is this. Like, if you beat me in folk style, that does not mean you would beat me in freestyle. If you beat me in Greco, that definitely doesn't mean you would beat me in freestyle. And so the complaint is this pin system, and it's a formula. If you read the initial explanation, it feels fairly vague, but then if you drill deep down, they give you the explanation, okay? The problem is this, and you've kind of jumped on board with me on this. Like, if you're going to complain about a situation, have a solution, right? Like, I think you and I kind of are on the same mindset on that. Probably maybe one of the few things in my life I've influenced you on positively. So I don't know a better solution. I mean, I think you could put a bunch of people together and try to rank it, right? I mean, you could have a committee, but there's always going to be kids that come out of nowhere, okay? Like, I'll give you a very specific example. In the girls, and I'm going to look it up. I think it was girls juniors 115, but I want to. I'm pulling up the bracket. Yes. So this is the weight. Okay. So, and this is just because I'm familiar with these kids. Okay. So Angelina Vargas from Missouri is the number 3 seed. Okay. And Cassidy Benwell from Missouri is the number 7 seed. Okay. And again, that's based on pin stuff, right? But if you look at their Fargo accomplishments, if you look at their freestyle accomplishments, if you look at what they've done out at Spokane, Vargas should be seated higher. Okay. And she was. Okay. But Vargas loses in the quarters to Landreth 6-2 and then got pinned. And then Benwell beats Landreth 15-6. And that's after Benwell beat Gabby Gomez. So the match was, or the bracket, at least on those 2 girls, the seed should have been the way they were from the 2 Missouri girls. I don't know if just A should have been higher than B. I don't know who should have been in between. But it's interesting to me because, like, Vargas tech-falled Landreth at my event in March. Like 10-0'd her. Or as GT would say, 10-rip. So sometimes people don't have a perfect training cycle. And listen, I'm a math guy. I like to get it right. And seeds do matter. seeds matter if you're the only time seeds don't matter is if you're the best person by a wide margin. I mean, because we're going to talk about the Olympics today, and like we want to be on certain sides of the bracket.
Sure.
Well, why? Why do we care? Like if seeds don't matter, then why do we care? Because they do matter. Because draws matter, right?
Well.
So the problem is when you have this many kids, right? It's just impossible. And then here's the other thing. Let's say you're ranked really high and you move up a weight. Okay, well, now what? Do we just say you're 0-0 at this weight, right? So there's no data. Like, Aaron Brooks moved from 84 to 97, right? Like, we didn't go, well, he probably won't place. Like Carter Starachi's moving up at least one weight, maybe two, right? Yep. I don't think you go, well, he's probably not going to place. Like, I mean, there's no way he can handle 10 pounds. I mean, we think he'd win 97, and that's 23 pounds. So
Agreed.
I don't know a better way. I mean, I think if there's a better way, I think you take the pin system. Maybe it's like the NCAA. Maybe the pin system's like the rubric, right? And it's a percentage of the ranking, and then these other people are a percentage of the ranking, and you combine them. But the problem with the human part is now people can be influenced. I mean, I'm not putting anybody on the committee, so there's no attack on anybody's integrity.
Yep.
But, and let me specifically say, I think if Willie was on the committee, like there'd be no integrity problems. Okay. Like I think Willie likes being right. And I'm like that. I like to be right about stuff I'm talking about. So I think he would just try to do the very best he can. And it's kind of like when we would do college rankings, like there's a justification for every number. Some are stronger than others. Sometimes you got to put a number next to a name. Okay. I don't know your thoughts on all this, because then I'm going to dig into the brackets a little bit.
Yeah, I thought, I don't know if there's a solution for it, because you still got to go on the mat, and everybody on a given day can beat anybody basically. And so it happens, but you want to be as close to being right as possible. You want to try to separate the best kids from wrestling in the first or second round. You'd like to see the two best kids in the country wrestle in the finals of Fargo if it's at all possible. Obviously, there's some other kids out there that say, no, you're not the second best. I think I am, and I'm going to take you out. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So, but I don't know how, when you got all the states there, David, and you don't see some of these other states, plus you got 5 guys from one state and they're all pretty good, different classes.
Yeah.
You haven't seen them wrestle. It's kind of hard to figure it out. I think Knight's son, who wrestled 120, who was placed at Fargo before, was seated like 28th in his weight bracket.
Right. So, and then conversely, there's a dude from Alabama that made the finals, right? Yeah. So here's the other thing about the pin system, and I don't want to say this like it's fact. I don't know how far it goes back, but it goes back a long time. Like when I was in Vegas, there's a dad there, and his kid's good, but his kid's been wrestling in USA events since he's like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that data goes back that far. Okay. And there's certainly an argument to be made that shouldn't count. Right. But then, so this is interesting, right? Like if you go, okay, when you're in juniors, which are basically 17 and 18-year-olds, okay, how you did at 8 shouldn't count. Like that, there's an argument. I'm not saying that's true, or even I feel that way, but I'm just saying somebody would take that position, right? And they wouldn't necessarily be wrong. Yes. Like, okay, well, does 9 count? Does 10 count? Does 11 count? Like, let's say you go 12 counts. Why 12? Why not 13? Why not 11? Right? Like it's sort of an artificial line in the sand, right?
Yep.
And it's interesting because you make these decisions and it's like recruiting, right? Like you've recruited kids that were 2 or 3 times state champions, and by their senior year, they're falling off, right? Like they don't have the love for the game anymore. They were just horsing kids. And now they got caught up on the strength meter. And there's other kids that maybe didn't place till they were a senior and took fourth, but they just got out coached. And you're like, that kid's going to be really good. And in your own mind, you're ranking them or seeding them because you're like, I'll take this kid over the other kid.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's dig into the results a little bit. I'm going to start with junior girls. I'm just going to point out a couple things that, like, at least to me. And so we're going to skip some people. I apologize. Like, the first thing that kind of stuck out to me, I just want to make sure I'm going through these by weights. So I want to give a big shout out to Zeo Estrada at 115. Her dad is Jeff Estrada. He wrestled for us in Merrimack back when you and I were coaching against each other. He would be the first one to tell you he led a hard life and has really turned himself around and come out of the backside and is a great influencer of people. And Zayo's been knocking on the door a bunch and finally punched through. She actually beat Benwell in the finals 10-0. And there's a great picture of her sort of pointing up. And then Jeff's turned 90 degrees and he's pointing at the sky too. And it's an iconic photo, like for that family, like that should probably be a poster when they walk, when you walk into their home. So yeah, very cool for them. Let me see who else won here. So this Savannah Witt, she took second, and I watched her wrestle at 120. So I haven't seen Blasco wrestle from Minnesota, but Savannah Witt's really good. So Blasco's got to be super legit. And I think when you see some of these kids, how they wrestle, like, when we get into the Olympic stuff, our youth is, especially on the women's girls, I guess they're girls transitioning into the women's side. Carly Brooks from Arizona, 125, super impressive. Have you seen her wrestle, Mark?
I have not.
You should go back. She's worth the watch. Okay. Trying to see if maybe I can just get to results here and go to the finals. Here we go. So Valerie Hamilton beat Sarah Henkel, who's Will Henkel's sister. Close match, but I think she's a Triple Crown winner, so big shout out to her. Kaylee Hayden from Oklahoma. She didn't have a match that left the first period. So that's awfully impressive. Sabrina Noss ended up with 5 stop signs in her high school career. So another super impressive performance by her. She wrestled in the Michigan Border Brawl, so shout out to Mario Flores on that one. Let me get into the U16s for the girls. So Jackie Bouzakis, you've watched her wrestle, I assume, a little bit, right?
I have. Sister of the Bouzakis boys that are both at Ohio State, or one's going to Ohio State and the other one's already there.
Yeah. Vince. Well, yeah. Vince is the one still at SEM, and he got banged up. So, and Nick is the one at Ohio State, but she's an absolute hammer, bro. She beat Neuenhuis from Michigan 6-0, and Neuenhuis is an absolute stud too. So let's get into. All right, here we go. U16 boys. Did you watch any of this last night?
I did not. Check the results. I checked the results. That was the easiest way for me to do is go through the brackets, see who was there, and who ended up in the finals, and then how they won.
Okay, so there's some people here that have some familiarity with. We're going to skip some people, so I apologize. But Cody Chittum's little brother took second.
Yep.
Bo Bassett's little brother took first. You know what I love about Bo Bassett, about Keegan Bassett? Keegan's face looks older than Bo's.
Really?
I want to say this no compliment. Keegan Bassett's an absolute stud, but sometimes when he looks like he's got a smirk, he looks like a guy that wants to return something at a store. And his hair is such a way that he looks way older than he is because he's a cadet. So I think he's got to be 16 at the oldest. I mean, we're excited that those kids are coming to Hall of Fame duels, but really good composure for that young man. And Versalisa Maryland wrestled him really tough. Hayden Schwab,
yep,
Iowa guy, Doug Schwab's son. So he was being cornered by his dad. First time I saw his dad in the corner. Like when I've gone to these other events, his dad was kind of standing back along with the immortal head coach, who's a really good dude. Him and PJ Terranova it was a 2-1 match, but man, was it a good match. And like these kids are so good at knowing when to get grounded and, you know, the tactics.
And Hayden's brother was also on the weight bracket. He was on the bottom side.
Are they twins?
He was on top. I don't think they're twins. I think they're a year apart.
They gotta be, right?
Yeah. But yeah, he didn't place, but he won some matches early. They're both going to be really good.
Okay.
So
Seamus Reagan, I know his dad, so shout out to him. He won second Fargo title, some guy. Justice Chesaroga, great match with Hunter Stevens, 4-3. Jaden James, so that's a Del Barton kid. Del Barton had a really good tournament with Jaden James, with Logan, with Parrington. I'm a big Brian Stoll fan. I've been working with him for a couple years over there at Hall of Fame duels. Just a good human, you know, guy that certainly cares about Del Barton and winning, but cares about the sport equally, which is difficult to find in people, you know. So Aaron Stewart, who's an absolute superstar out of Illinois, 10-0 in the finals. So I think to me the story overall is how good Pennsylvania is, right? I got to give a huge shout out to Kyle Martin. He's one of the main guys over there. He and I have talked for years about why is Pennsylvania so terrible in freestyle, right? Because like they weren't winning junior duels. They weren't placing top 5 at Fargo. And it felt like they just didn't care, right? But then they'd have the most All-Americans in college. Like, you know, I know there's a ton of D1 schools out there, but anybody that knows anything about high school wrestling says PA is one of the 5 best high school states in the country, and 5 might be low. They're sure. top echelon, right? Yeah. And so there's been a concentrated effort out there by Kyle and his guy Jim to get these teams together. And it's more or less making this important. Like a couple years ago, Fellers and those guys made junior duels really important to the Iowa kids. They also had a bunch of hammers, right? Yeah. I mean, that helps. Like you have if it's important to a bunch of kids that stink, it's not going to matter, but it matters. And so when you combine urgency and care with skill, that's when special things happen. Like you saw this year with Wisconsin at junior duel, right? And Wisconsin just doesn't have the depth yet of Pennsylvania. Like you said, I mean, a PA didn't, like they still got, everybody's got states to leave people behind. Okay. So like, I don't want to start that conversation because it's just a rabbit hole you can't get out of. But, you know, like they left some guys behind like Bo that was on, you know, an international team. Like same thing with Oklahoma with Jeter and like Lockett and those kind of guys. You know, like didn't leave guys like, well, this guy might take 8. Like this guy's in probably the favorite or right.
You're right.
That's a funny face you made. So anyway, let's go to junior boys. So I tried to watch all these last night. I got through a bunch of them. Okay, so a couple things. So, hey, 126 was an interesting weight, right? Like Seidel and Koufax Christensen. Yep. Christensen making the finals is a bit of a surprise, right?
Pretty talented. He's won he wrestled in juniors at the duels. Don't know if he lost a match there. He's legit. I mean, he's big time for Iowa.
Where's he going to school? Is he going to OU?
I think so.
That's a huge recruit for them to get him out of Iowa, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, when's the last time that happened?
Oh.
Is it Kilgard? Somebody like that?
Kilgard, probably from Council Bluffs, yeah.
That's a million years ago.
Yeah, it seems like it now.
All right, the big hyped match, Forrest Mendoza. Did you watch that?
I did not, but Jax just 10-0'd him. I mean, and he's up. He's up a weight. So you can tell he's starting to grow. Well, he's not going to be. I never thought he was going to be a 25-pounder in college. I never thought he was going to be a 33-pounder in college, and I think I'm pretty right. I think he's kind of going to be 41, 49, 57. He's just going to get bigger. His
dad is a tall human being.
Yeah, he's very skilled. It was fun to watch him, compete.
Go back and watch the final. Some really tricky turns and things he did. He's the absolute stereotype of he's comfortable in uncomfortable positions.
Yeah.
Right? So that was fun to watch. Sergio Vega's super tricky, man. He's going to Cornell. He's got a really good feel. Congrats to Sunnyside. I mean, he was up a weight. So both those guys were up a weight. Again, I don't think Jack's like bumped up a weight. I think it's like, I'm good enough. I don't need to cut weight and I'm growing.
Yep.
And I think you've kind of come around. I think, and maybe it's different. I don't want to say what you think, but I think for a while when you and I would talk off the air, if a guy bumped up in college, you're like, well, he's not going to be as good. And I think now, and a lot of it has to do with guys are cutting less weight. You're like, okay, well, and everybody's got great strength and conditioning programs at these elite programs anyway. Like, I don't think we're going to see Carter Sirachi look the same size and just be wrestling 184. Like, I think he's going to look bigger. Like sure. Brooks looked like an entirely different human being.
Correct. He was a beast.
Yeah.
It looked like he cut weight to make that weight. So, I mean, he spent more time in the weight room, and it showed.
They said he doesn't lift weights, bro. I don't even know how that's possible.
I don't know how he's filling out then.
Yeah. Zepeda beat Smokey McClure 13-4. And I think they're going to get Zepeda and Bo at who's number one. So congrats on that.
Who did Zepeda beat in the semis? That was the match. David, who was the number one seed there? Oh, from Pennsylvania.
Pearson Manville.
Yes. So that must have been a good match.
It was pretty low scoring. It was 3-1, like a lot of almost scores. I mean, some great scrambles, We just had Zepeda in that Beat the Streets event up in New England. Him and Braun had a 15-15 match. Zepeda moved up. Braun took third. Braun kind of got upset in the round of 16 and then ran through the backside. Both kids. OU had a really good tournament, by the way. So Landon Robidoux, the flip, beat Paul Kelly 10-0. Melvin Miller comes up clutch late to beat Isaiah Jimenez. Alessio Parrington 10-0. Ryan Burton Henkel was a really tactical match. Harvey Ludington, man, that dude 10-0'd Ziola in a minute 17. So big recruit for ASU. Angelo Posada beat Anthony Harris. So I was happy to see Anthony Harris wrestle, man, because like he was a Super 32 guy a year ago. He's at St. Peter's Prep. I don't pretend to know all these high school kids, but I know this because he couldn't wrestle at Hall of Fame duels. And his coach was like, we'd obviously be a lot better with him in the lineup. I'm like, look, we ain't mad at you. Like, kids get hurt. Stuff happens. I don't know if he even wrestled at state this last year. I think he was like hurt, like injured, not hurt.
Sure.
So, he made the finals. And then Rocco Delegata beat Herrera 8-7. I got to go back and watch that match, but I like how they both wrestle. I mean, it's crazy. Herrera has lost twice now in like the last 4 or 5 weeks because he lost at junior duels to Wisconsin in the semis. So, but to two high-level dudes. Rocco Delegata is really smart. Like he's really – him and Ziola are really good. They want you on their legs. They're really good at crotch throws and go-behinds and just little tips. Tilts and hip tips and all those kind of things. So there's, and if you get bored waiting for the Olympics, there's so many freaking good matches to watch here. I got my dad his Flow account, so I had to explain to him how you can go back and click on just a bracket and click on the little arrow and watch the matches. But he'll be fired up for that. So. Overall,
I do want to mention Drayshawn Ross.
Got hurt, right?
Got hurt in the quarters.
Was it quarters around a 16? I can't even remember now.
I don't remember, but I watched the match. Same shoulder that he's had issues with. But, the big thing was they talked him in. He wasn't going to wrestle in Fargo. He was getting ready for Worlds. And now his chances of maybe wrestling in the Worlds are, out. So, and that's kind of, it's really a thin line that you walk sometimes when you decide whether an athlete needs the prep for the Worlds and this is going to help them. If he's got an injury, I'd say sit him until the Worlds, because that's more important on his resume, because he's won Fargo, 4? He's got 4 stop signs.
I don't know that.
Greco and Freestyle both, yeah. So
he lost in the round of 16 to Melvin Whitehead from Nevada. And I went back and watched that match because, in the day one, you're just kind of skimming brackets, right? Because you could literally be there all day. And I was just looking for upsets, and I went back because it was 3-3. There the certain VPOs and BFAs and all these things. And so I was like, well, maybe he got stepped over and pinned, because that happens too, right? There was a kid that was beating Roller 5-0, and then Roller stepped over and pinned him. And if Roller gets you on your back, you're done. The guy's an absolute finisher. So, but that wasn't the kid got hurt. Jace pinned him. There's a big difference.
Yep. So hopefully he'll be okay, and he'll be able to go to the Worlds and wrestle and represent the USA. So I got my fingers crossed.
What's interesting, and I could say this now, I talked to Drayshawn's dad because I wanted to put him in Border Brawl, right? Get him a national level match in Kansas City.
Yep.
And they're like, he's getting shoulder surgery when the season's over. I go, okay. I mean, you just keep it moving, right? And then he didn't, and I wasn't mad. People reevaluate things, but it had to have been serious enough they were considering it.
Yep.
The guy's high integrity dude, the father. So, it wasn't like he's just making stuff up, they're legitimately thinking this might happen, So, I mean, and he's been wearing that black harness thing for a couple years.
For a full year now. Yeah.
Yeah, but it feels longer than that. It feels longer than 12 months, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
So I just hope he does okay and he comes back, and because he is fun to watch and he's very talented. So.
Right. And we're recording this on Thursday, which is the off day. There's some beach wrestling, but girls freestyle is over. Juniors, cadets, or U16s. I'm still old school. And then boys freestyle is over, and tomorrow and Saturday are Greco.
Yep.
So whoever came up with this idea, it's really smart, right? First of all, keeps the boys and girls out, which is good for hotels and stuff and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think more people focus on juniors on freestyle than Greco in boys. And it does give you an extra day off, right? There's a day off today. So some people that I know, I wrestled Greco, and then the next day's freestyle. That's how it used to be, the opposite order. And you're like, bro, I'm tired. I'm sore. My neck and back hurt. I'm not built for this life,
Yeah.
So it's a smart change, I think. I mean, people are going to complain, so people aren't going to be happy about it. I mean, nobody's happy about everybody's never happy about everything, but and they Gary and Pete and all those guys, they know what the hell they're doing up there for sure. So, all right. I don't know how much we're going to get into the Olympics because so last week we talked about the Russian boycott, but Mamedov accepted, and now Mamedov is, and I will air quote, he's injured. I'll let you go first.
Agree.
You want to go on the Russian hit list first, I'll let you go.
No, I don't think he was ever going to be able to go. I don't think Russia, when they boycotted, they basically said, our athletes are not going to be there. And one of our athletes wants to go, that means they're turning against their country. And that's basically what, in a nutshell, what they said. So in a country like that, I don't think I'd be going to Olympics. If you have a family and you kind of worry about things like that. It's not like that here in America, obviously. But, I was always wondering how he was going to get there and how he was going to pay for it, because the country's not going to pay for it. The organization wouldn't have paid for it because they're boycotting.
Yeah, so, I don't know. I mean, like that feels like the least of the problems. I'll just say that. You know what I mean? Like,
well, you put yourself on the hit list then, David. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying the money part I don't feel like was the problem. Like, I feel like they figured that part out. Like, somebody's got money, right? Like, I mean, for years when, like, look at this college stuff with all this NIL money. Like, it was always in existence. It's just out from underneath, like the cockroaches have come out from underneath the carpet.
Sure.
Like, if people think for years there was no money, they're insane. Like, this money's always been going on. Okay. And maybe cockroaches is harsh. Let's just say this. The money is out there now. There's always people that have money that either want to use it to create influence, use it to make themselves happy, or use it to help other people. And while those motivations are different, and while some are way more altruistic than others, it doesn't change the fact that people with money have power.
Correct.
Like, that's been going on since day one, so like my guy Ethan Kyle said, he goes, it's the golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules. And which I had not heard before, but I'm sure is an old saying, but it's a good one. So, I mean, you can go all the way back to when you were at Iowa Central and you had X amount of scholarships and X amount of dollars. And then if somebody late came up and they were going to be a difference maker, you could probably ask your athletic director and they'd probably help you. Like they come.
The athletic director didn't have a lot to say about it. The president of the college was one you had to go talk to. So, yeah.
Okay, but my point's the same.
Yep.
Okay, let's not get lost in the semantics. The point is somebody above you that can control the check. And it really wasn't money. It's a tuition waiver in most cases.
Yep.
So you figure it out, right? We got into the whole thing last week about whether or not, people should be upset. And I think the mindset of champions are, I control what I can control, right? So like I was, I watched more of those interviews. All these guys are excited to wrestle, and women are all excited to wrestle the best people in the world. They're all super confident. And they're the same level of confidence of a Spencer Lee or an Aaron Brooks who are unseeded, or a Dom Parrish who's unseeded, versus a Kyle Dake who's the number 1 seed. And what's interesting, like I just read Kyle Klingman's preview on the women's brackets, and like Amita Lohr is unseeded, and he's like, she's the best weight in the bracket, bro, or best athlete in the bracket, bro. And for people that don't understand this, the reason why she's not seeded is she doesn't have any seeding points. If you go, okay, well, duh. She doesn't have any seeding points because she hasn't been wrestling at that weight.
Correct.
Okay, right. But I mean, some people, I'm sure you've talked to people. Yeah, I don't understand that. And so, and again, there's an argument, well, non-Olympic weight is not as hard as Olympic weight. And there's some validity to that. I'm probably push that more than you do, just from being around people that tell me that, who I respect. I don't know when's the last time this woman lost. I mean, maybe our black belt boyfriend beat her in a jiu-jitsu sparring match in private, but maybe she lost in, Parcheesi or something. But like,
she's won everything she's wrestled in. I can't remember last time she even lost in any event.
I'm saying, like, it's not like she took like a weekend off at the World Cup and just wrestled a bad match. Like she had a very weird match at the Pan Ams where she got down early.
Yep.
Like she got 4-pointed maybe out of bounds and just chipped away and chipped away and chipped away. Like, she's so good. If she's not dominating, we're like, wow,
Yeah.
So Yeah, she's
well, and similar to Zane, won it at 70 kilos last year of the Worlds, and he's down to 65 now wrestling because that's the Olympic weight. He's not seated either. So you have a world champion from last year at 70 kilos in the 65-pound bracket or 65-kilo bracket, and he's not seated in the top 8.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. And Allure's credentials are even better than Zane's because, like, she's won World Cup. She's won a bunch of world championships. Like, her resume is super deep, bro.
She won 3 Worlds last year at 3 different age groups.
I think she won U20s, U23s, and seniors. Yeah.
Yes. That's unheard of. I mean,
and
maybe it's been done before, but
I don't think so. I don't think so. Well, first of all, you got to remember we're kind of in the golden age of American wrestling, right? Like, there were years where we had like when Henry Cejudo won, he was our only medalist.
Yep.
So like, I mean, now everybody's fighting for the shine because we have so many good athletes. So I mean, that's a great problem, right? It's like the teams you had at Iowa Central. Like, a guy could take 5th and be the 5th best guy on the team. Somewhere else you go, the guy took 5th, they're doing a parade for him, right? Yep. And maybe that guy's path was even harder because he didn't have as many good people to train with, but nonetheless, it is what it is. So, and we got like 7-8 minutes left. I think we're almost better to stop a little early than we are to try to dig into Olympics. So next week we'll record on the 25th. The 26th is the opening ceremonies. I'm going to look up when wrestling starts. I think wrestling doesn't start. Yeah, wrestling starts on August 5th. Okay, so we have 2 more weeks to kind of get in our previews. You have 10 days to get your Venmo ready for my birthday present. So, you got time to do that.
Let me write this down. Venmo,
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. So you send me some free USA Wrestling gear, I'm sure. So, yeah, but it's watch Fargo, watch the Greco. I mean, I did an interview with Kamal. Hopefully it's going to come out soon. But 4 of the 6 weights we qualified, USA qualified for the Olympics. 3 traditional path, 1 Russian path. Sometime it would be great for me to do a match chat with just the mindset of guys about seedings and stuff like that, because what's really, and guys and girls, the athletes, because a lot of these athletes have been seeded number 1 their whole life,
Sure.
And so you go into the Olympics or something like that, or the Worlds for the first time, and they're just not. Like, every time you go up to a new level, you're not the number 1 seed. I mean, I remember when Gable Stevenson came out of high school and we had to rank him, right? And I'm trying to think of Tanner. I can't think of the kid's last name now. Tanner Hall was from Arizona State, okay? And he had placed the year before, and I watched Gable Stevenson take him down 5 times in like a minute at some USA Wrestling event. Like, it was 10-0, okay? But it wasn't like he took him down once or like hit a go behind and laced him 4 times. Like, he didn't freestyle tech him. He teched him, okay? And I remember Andy goes, "What are you going to rank him?" I go, "I'm going to rank him 1, 5, or 33. And he goes, "Give me the argument for each." I said 33 so people don't think I'm an idiot and forgot about him. And you and me were part of this conversation. Like, but 5 because Tanner Hall was 6 or was 5, so he'd go above him. Or 1 because I think he's the best guy. But I'm like, I don't know that I can justify 1. I think we landed on the 5 from what I remember.
I'm pretty sure we put all the previous All-Americans ahead of him, and he was the next one in line. So just
maybe that's
the way we always did it, and we weren't going to change. You set up a baseline that you used every year, returning All-Americans, even if somebody bumped up, and they were a returning All-American. Then we had some flexibility where we'd put them. But if they were just coming in and hadn't placed, we always put previous All-Americans before them.
Yeah, maybe. You're probably right. I mean, point being that
we knew Gable was probably one of the best guys in the country, but preseason rankings don't, like you said, mean a heck of a lot until they actually start wrestling. So,
yeah.
But we wanted to get it right.
Well, the other problem I think you get into psychologically is, are you ranking or are you predicting, right? And like when you want your rankings to be right, like I remember a couple years ago, I made a big argument that Pinheiro should be the #1 ranked guy with him and Yanni and Gomez, like, you know, the secret. And people didn't change it because they knew Yanni's the best guy and he's going to win it at the end of the year. That's not the point of rankings.
True.
The point of rankings are you take somebody's body of work and you put together the strongest argument for who should be where. So anyway, but I think the mindset of these athletes, you know, and it goes all the way back to, you jump from, you know, U14 to U16 to U18 to U20 to U23 to senior to world, you know, all this stuff. Like, I think the mindset, I'm sure there'd be a bunch of redundancy in a positive way, but I'd be interested in how people frame it, because I think people make jumps in life or they don't make jumps in life. And I'm always interested in studying how people do that. Like I watch the Ultimate Fighter show. I don't really care who wins the fights. It sounds terrible to say, but like I watch the body language. I watch the self-talk. You know, like there's a kid on there that just lost that went to Iowa Central that I had recruited back in the day. And you could just tell he got tired.
Is that Landon?
Edwin Cooper.
Oh, Edwin Cooper. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, and he'll be back, but just how you go through it, right? Like how people perform under pressure is super fascinating to me. There's some kids that are so good, like Zeo Estrada, okay, perfect example. She killed everybody, right? But there's at least one year where she got pinned in the finals. So even though she was a massive gambling favorite on her and Benwell's super dangerous, really tough, really strong, no quit in that girl. And you've had a bad experience in this identical situation, right? Mm-hmm. So your ability to push through that is significant. And it also gets you mentally to the next level. Like, okay, this was on my to-do list. And as much as girls wrestling has grown, and it's phenomenal, it's the #1. I went on somebody else's podcast and we talked about it. There's still not a ton of depth on a state-by-state basis where you're like, man, Susie Ostrander is the #1 seed, but she's going to have a really hard quarterfinal, a really hard semifinal, and a really hard final. Like she might, if she's nationally ranked, she might have one hard match or maybe none. Might just kill everybody because the talent's spread out. And that's how you start, right? Like you look at girls wrestling 10 years ago versus now, it's seismic.
Yep.
So anyway, all right. Well, we're at 11 o'clock. I don't know how we got there. Like most of my life, me just yapping.
Yeah.
All right, man. It was always good seeing you, my brother. And
you too.
We appreciate everybody watching and listening, and we will see you all next week.